The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
This is Victor Tiffany with Citizens Against Plutocracy, talking today with Laura Wells, Green Party candidate in the 13th District of California, running for Congress. Laura, thanks for joining me today.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with just telling people a little bit about yourself, your background, why you ran for Congress.
Well, I've been a Green since there's been a Green Party. That was in 1992 in California when it became ballot qualified. And I've run for office before, and I've been very active both at the local level and at the state level of the Green Party. But what happened this year was that somebody noticed in the spring that Barbara Lee, our congressperson for District 13, which is Berkeley, Oakland, and some surrounding cities in Alameda County, East Bay, San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, so they noticed that Barbara Lee was running unopposed, which in itself is a statement about our democracy and how accountable anybody is for what they do. But they said, well, why don't we run somebody as a Green write-in candidate? Because this is California with the top two primary, which is a deal killer. It generally kills off everybody but the Democrats and Republicans for the November ballot. And sometimes there are two Democrats or two Republicans and not even one of each of the two party system. So I ran, and there were four others: a Republican, American Independent, Libertarian, and no party. And I ended up getting 3 times the number of write-in votes, 800 some write-in votes, and was on the November ballot. So there I am running against arguably the most progressive congressperson in Washington, with an opportunity to show the difference between people that don't take corporate money and even good people who do take it, and especially what party are you aligned with? Does the party you're aligned with take corporate money or doesn't? And the Greens don't.
All right. So you're a candidate who signed the Contract for American Renewal. Yes. Why did you sign that contract?
Well, when I look at it, and I have a copy of it right here, I look down it, and it's aligned with the Green Party of California, the Green Party of the United States, the Green Party of the international platform. I mean, overturning Citizens United, election integrity, infrastructure needs, address climate change, stop war. There's other ways to use it. Ending the fatal use of force by law enforcement officers. Boy, is that something that's needed. And the Social Security, Medicare, healthcare, trade policies, tuition-free public colleges, minimum wage of 15. I just read down the list. And right down the line, particularly starting with the idea that we cannot have these things, and I hope people can stop pretending that they're going for these things when they're taking corporate money, corporate and billionaire money.
Right. There's a lot of items on there: the free college education, the expanded Social Security, the infrastructure proposal, which is on the order of $2 trillion, on the, what's the other big ticket item?
You said education.
Medicare for all, free education. These are very expensive items. You're a tax and spend liberal, aren't you?
No. The tax, although, I don't think there are tax and spend liberals anymore. They're borrow and spend liberals,
So you're a borrow and spend liberal?
No, so I'm not a borrow and spend liberal. I know that there's money out there. I mean, if anybody has any doubts, all they've got to do is look at the first part of 2008 when there wasn't money for health care and housing and education and all of those things. And then suddenly in October 2008, there was $700 billion to bail out the banks. And then over time, even more than that. Where'd that money come from? But it wasn't there. So when somebody, I think it was Jill Stein who ran for president, she said that in Massachusetts, they were saying that when they say there's no money, they mean there's no money for you.
Right.
But where the money is tax the rich and stop the wars. There is no excuse for any country, I don't care if it's my country, for spending as much on the military as the rest of the world combined, almost as much as the rest of the world combined, and making more enemies than friends with those expenditures. And so just take 20% out of that, take whatever. We don't need more nuclear weapons. How many times over do you need to be able to destroy the earth? And the drones, I mean, all of the enormous number of military actions that have been happening over the past decades through administrations of the Republicans and the Democrats. That's one part of it, the military that cut those expenses and bring in the income. The oligarchy, the rule by the few happens because they get a concentration of wealth. It's the concentration of wealth develops a concentration of power. And when Eisenhower, who was a Republican president, left office in 1961, I think a lot of people know by now, the top income tax bracket, that means just the very top, not the rest of it, the first 50,000, everybody pays the same income tax rate. But the top rate was 91%. Now, the Democrats and Republicans were like really battling it out for something between 36.9 and 39% for the upper income tax bracket. That incentivizes people, the CEOs of the companies, to pay themselves more because they'll get to keep at least 60% and even more with all the shenanigans with their tax returns. But whereas before it was they would keep 9%. So there were less, both we had more money coming from them and they were fewer incentives for them to pay themselves outrageous salaries.
Right. So there's, as you suggested, there's 11 policy positions on there, and you may be surprised that it's not a Green Party platform. We call it a majoritarian populism because every one of these 11 items, we refused to add anything to the CFAR that didn't have majority support. So every one of these are backed by 50+% of the American people. So this is a populist agenda. Which of these 11 items do you feel most passionate about? Which ones do you talk about the most when you're either on the stump or in a forum like you were in last night with Congresswoman Lee? Sorry. Which do you feel most passionate about?
Well, I want to go back and say that, like, Green Party values are not radical. They're not extreme. They're not even extremely liberal. They're the values of American people, certainly Californian people. But people want health care. But I'm glad you pointed that out. It's this list that you have with CFAR are things that people want, the majority. What's wrong with our government? They're sold out. I do tend to talk about the economic things a lot because people think, part of my campaign is wanting to be part of people raising their expectations. Tuition-free education. We used to have it in California, and other countries have it now. Other countries that are not as wealthy as the U.S. And how do we know that? Because no other country is as wealthy as the U.S. And they have it. The young people take it for granted. A friend of mine who was a counselor debriefed a French foreign exchange student and said, "What did you find surprising about the U.S.?" She said, that your students are going to have to pay so much for college and that you don't have health care.
Right.
You know, they take it for granted. So healthcare is one I talk about a lot, that, and education a lot, and the economy a lot, and that of course ties into the wars
And the infrastructure.
and the infrastructure. No excuse. And infrastructure includes excellent mass transportation, because we need that for the climate, you know, to address the climate change. One of the things with both the platform that that I see in front of me with CFAR and with the Green Party platform is that they're all interlocking. When it's sort of like a permaculture is a single solution will address multiple problems. And so that's what happens. If you want to address the economy, if you want to address the ecology, address peace, get peace. Peace is a lot more ecological and economical than war.
Yeah, that has not a lot of understanding about the devastating effects on the environment to going to war. So this contract that you've signed, how do you expect to use this in the campaign? It was designed as really there to help candidates win elections. How do you expect to use this either on the stump or in debates or on your website or whatever? How do you expect to use this contract to help win your election against Congresswoman Lee?
Well, on Facebook and social media, Twitter, Facebook, can challenge Barbara Lee to look at that. You know, now that we've met, we've been at a forum, you know, I know that there are people on her steering committee that get my email blasts and that are monitoring my Twitter and Facebook, and to challenge her to sign that and see what happens. And so that's a personal direct thing to our sitting congressperson. And also, you know, at the same time, of course, that would post it on social media, and adding it to my website. I have I'll speak to my website people and get a place that will where we can list the things that I've signed on to, like no fossil fuels, and you know, a whole bunch of other things that are really worth backing, because the people of this country back them.
Right. So one last question then. I mean, you're up against someone you admitted is probably one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive member of the House of Representatives, Barbara Lee. Why would voters in your district want to support you and not her? I mean, she's certainly got more experience than you. What do you bring to the table that she doesn't have? Well, why Laura Wells and not Barbara Lee?
Well, and you and I know that and anybody listening knows that the experience that the people in Congress have it's almost like the health insurance companies. They're making sure we don't have these things. They have a lot of experience in making up excuses for why we don't have these things, a lot of which other countries take for granted. But what I would say to some diehard Barbara Lee fans that I know is in the voting booth or on your absentee ballot, which are coming out very soon, say, I love you, Barbara Lee. I'm voting for Laura Wells, so that when you go to Washington, you can say, I've got to come out stronger and faster for these things that I really believe in, because my constituents back there in Berkeley and Oakland, not to mention Albany, Alameda, Emeryville, Piedmont, and San Leandro, are nipping at my heels. My constituents are putting pressure on me. I can't just let this co-sponsorship go by, or I can't not push for this kind of thing. And so I love you, Barbara Lee. I'm voting for Laura Wells. And there are a lot of people, particularly, who have been extremely engaged, issue by issue by issue, that had wished that Barbara Lee had used her power and her leadership to help them get the word out and to forward the issues and the bills and the legislation and even just the rallies and I don't mean just the rallies. Rallies are extremely important, even the rallies that they're trying to pull together. So that's why I think people should vote green. They should vote green. They should vote independent. They should vote CFAR. You know, even if they think the other candidate is going to win, put pressure on them.
Right. And of course, something you didn't mention is you'd be making history. You'd be the first member of Congress who of the Green Party.
Yes, may I say we have 3 Green Congress people this time, for the first time since the top 2 primary in 2012, 2014, 2016. Now finally, 2018, we have 3, 2 in Los Angeles and me here up in the Bay Area. And it would be a game changer to have a Green in Congress. We would not have taken single-payer health care off the table out of consideration.
Right. Well, best of luck to you, Laura, and we'll be talking with you again sometime.
Well, thank you, Victor, and thank you, everyone at CFAR and across the country, you know, for what we're doing. And I always want to say good luck to all of us.
Thank you.
Revolt Against Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.